Earlier this week, I laid out all the blocks after trimming them a little while ago. And then I decided on the specific placement for all the blocks because each of them has their own character, and I wanted to make sure that I spread those out good enough that there weren't any hot spots. When the design was already ready, because I made that last year. And then after switching around a couple of the blocks over maybe 2 or 3 days, I was happy and turned all those blocks on the floor into neat little stacks, numbered stacks, so that I can piece them together into a quilt top. I still have to decide on how I'm going to quilt the top, but I'm a little bit daunted by how big it's going to be. I think 90 by 90 inches. This afternoon I'm going to do my best and piece together as much of the quilt top as I can, and we'll see how it goes. I remember this from when I started. This block is too small, but this one ended up being too big, so I've already pieced those together, and now I'm going to start with the rest. And then I spent the day and evening behind my sewing machine powering through all those blocks. Yay! I have a quilt top, but it's late now, I need some sleep, and I'll give it a good press in the morning. It took me a while, but I managed to sew all the blocks together. Still need to give it a press and do a victory lap around the quilt to secure all the seams, but the top is done. I need to start making decisions about how I'm going to finish the quilt, and I think I'm going to do hand tying, and I have this organic cotton string yarn. Yeah, I still have a little bit of time to think about it, but first a victory lap. As I was doing my victory lap, I realized I still have to do a border all around it because otherwise it's not going to be big enough. I ended up finishing the lap around the quilt anyway because it makes it easier when I'm handling it. It's not as fragile because otherwise all those seams ending in the side might open up. So all in all, it's not bad, but it would have been better to just immediately add on a border. But since I have the edge stitched, I'm going to press the quilt top and try and remove as many of those stray threads that are everywhere currently. Hopefully this will help me as I'm pressing so I can get them off. And then after pressing, I need to prepare the strip and vacuum everything because my house is one dusty mess after last night's sewing session.
The roller ended up working really well, so I can highly recommend using one of them to get off all those stray threads. And after cleaning up and pressing the quilt top, I started on the border. I took my largest scraps and combined them to create larger pieces. And after pressing, I trimmed them down to 10 centimeter wide strips, which is about 4 inches. And I didn't really think about the width that much. I just looked at the rulers that I had and I thought that would be a good size, and I could always make it a little bit narrower if I didn't like the width. After trimming, sewed everything together, gave them a good press, and did a quick check to see if I had enough length.
I've sewn the strips and I think they should be long enough. Oh, you can hardly see them, but I just draped them over the quilt to measure, and I think it's more than enough. Just pinned the border on, and I'm going to do it sort of side by side. So pin, sew, add the next border, and then keep going. I've put the border on 2 sides, but I'm wondering if it's like too big. And what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to unpack my bedding and see how it fits on there, because it's 270 centimeters by 220 centimeters. And I might just hit the 220 with the border on. I'm not quite sure if I want it that big. So I'm going to see how it fits. I need to make a decision because I want to have the borders on and maybe even start tying the quilt. Not sure if I have time for that. Well, who knows? We'll see. So this is a bit of a rough estimate, but I think I have enough. On the side I have about 20 centimeters extra, which should be enough because I'm going to tie the quilt. I've just pinned on the last border, and my very scientific way of measuring said border turned out perfectly.
And then the project I worked on for months reached a big milestone. But it all started with a simple challenge: make a scrappy quilt and hide a constellation between the stars. There were some highs.
Okay. Are you kidding me? This is so cute.
And there were some lows.
I don't think I like the blocks with the purple in it.
But now I'm one step closer to finishing the quilt.
So the quilt top is finished, and now I need to decide how I'm going to quilt it. I have the bedding. I'm pretty sure I'm going to use that one. I have thread because I wanted to hand tie it. However, I'm debating if that's the best option because I'm not quite sure if such a big quilt is going to hold up using the hand tying method. Another option would be to maybe hand stitch around the stars and then hand tie the rest of it, but I'm not sure if a sort of a hybrid method will look good. I asked on Instagram and somebody said they would probably try and hand quilted in their lap, but it's so big. I could also split the bedding and then put it under my domestic sewing machine, but that's I think that's going to limit the options, because then I would have to do straight lines, and I could only do them in one direction. So I could add a strip of bedding in the center first, quilt that, add the rest of the bedding on the sides, quilt that, and then quilt the other side. So I wouldn't have to roll up the entire quilt, including wadding, to do the center. But I don't think that's the best way to go. So maybe doing sort of big stitch quilting by hand. Yeah, maybe you have a good suggestion. Have you tackled such a big project by hand or under your domestic sewing machine? Because sending it off to a long arm quilter is not an option. Financially, that's just not going to happen. Now, I did do a little test with hand stitching around the star. I do like the effect, but just the idea of hand quilting such a big project, I don't know if I'm ready to commit. Please send ideas. Also, if I were to hand quilt it, what pattern would you choose? Somebody suggested doing sort of a swirly pattern, which I think looks nice, but that would mean I would have to move around sort of the quilt a lot, or myself around the quilt. And yes, so maybe one approach would be doing diagonal lines through the blocks, so making crosses through the 16 patches. I still like the idea of hand quilting around the stars. But yeah, please send help, encouragement, and ideas.